So for the cases of Medicare and Medicaid, because if it's a nosocomial infection, they don't pay for it. If you get out of the hospital today, go home, trip, scrape your knee, and it gets infected, that is a nosocomial infection by their definition. Because you acquired it within 72 hours of a hospital stay. They've also gone on to change the definition of hospital mortality. If you're in the hospital, you have open heart surgery, everything goes great, you go back to perfect health, you leave under the power of your own 2 feet, drive yourself home, get in a car wreck and die, that is a hospital mortality. You died within 72 hours of a hospital stay, which means they don't pay for anything. So the definitions are changing thanks to the federal government. When we talk about these microorganisms, how we combat them, how they combat us, this is forms of control. Sterilization, destruction of all forms of life, including bacterial spores. Usually chemical or physical methods are used. Sterilization is very, very difficult to obtain. It is very hard to make something sterile. What we usually do is disinfection. We attempt to destroy as much as we can. Because as we've learned, that's, talking about Anthrax Island, even fire does not guarantee sterilization.
That's why they autoclave stuff, is that right?
Yes. Disinfection process eliminates most organisms that may cause disease. They do not destroy spores. And some of your very, very difficult bacteria may not be killed. The difference between a disinfectant and an antiseptic is what it's applied to. Disinfectant is applied to an inanimate object. Wiping down this table, you're disinfecting. If you're putting on your hands or skin, it's an antiseptic. Some things can be both. That alcohol hand sanitizer or whatever, if you apply it to that table, it's disinfectant. If you apply it to your hands, it's an antiseptic. Those things that we're talking about like that are bactericidal. They're there to kill a microorganism. A bacteriostatic does not kill anything, but it stops the growth. Most antibiotics do not kill bacteria. They are bacteriostatic. They stop it from multiplying, from dividing, from spreading, and then let your body kill it. The idea of sterilization and disinfection comes from a little more than 100 years ago. Dr. Joseph Lister is called he's the father of aseptic surgery. And he came about this idea because he noticed in a hospital in Vienna where he was working and teaching, he noticed that their mortality rates for labor and delivery patients was exceedingly high. But what was happening is they were being rounded on by the medical students. The medical students would spend all day long in labs cutting up and practicing on cadavers. Since hand washing was not a thing, they would go from cutting on dead bodies to delivering babies. When he started practicing and changing his ideas and started making them wash their hands and use antiseptics and all that, they cut their mortality rate by almost 70%. The mortality rate for amputations back in the day, we all know, it's basically a death sentence. Mortality rate was 50% if you had an amputation. After he changed these techniques, it went from 50% to 15%. So he actually originated the whole idea for aseptic surgery, because before then, surgeons, they wouldn't even wash the blood off their hands when they went into surgery. They'd wipe it on their hands and start cutting, That's the way they operate.
Just saying.
But that's also why historically they say 200 years ago the life expectancy was 4 years old. That's because 60% of people die in childbirth. So it really averages on. If you made it past childbirth, you had a very good odds of living in your 60s or 70s. So factors that influence how easy or how much of an organism we can kill. Number one, what type is it? Starting at the bottom, lipid viruses, bacteria, those are very, very easy to kill. You go all the way up to the top, prions, it's almost impossible to kill.
That's why they don't do autopsy. Like those, right?
That's right. You're also not allowed to bury someone who has died of a prion disease. They are cremated regardless of conditions.
When a prion disease fails, that causes.
Yep.
There's also the variant of that humans can get. It's called Creutzfeldt-Jakob.
Yeah.
It is essentially mad cow disease in a human form. What a prion is, it's not a virus, it's not a bacteria. It's an abnormal protein. It affects only the central nervous system. So like if you were to eat a steak off of a cow that died from mad cow disease, you would not catch this. If you were to have any nerve, spinal tissue, anything like that, you got it. Because even cooking this steak's not going to kill it. Think about most of your steaks, the T-bones and all that, they include part of the vertebrae. That's where the problem comes in. Other factors that influence how easy this stuff is to kill, number one, the type of organism we're dealing with. That's it off that list. Are we dealing with viruses? Are we dealing with bacteria? Etc. The number, how much is there? If I wipe that table and there is one Staph aureus bacteria on it, it'd be pretty easy to kill that. If there's a layer 2 inches thick, you're going to have to scrub for a while. Concentration of the disinfecting agent. Let's say we're using bleach. Big difference between straight bleach and adding 1 drop of bleach in a 5-gallon bucket of water. Presence of organic material. Blood, pus, mucus, and all that affects the ability of the disinfecting agent. So if you're putting an antiseptic on your hand, you have a nasty infected wound on it. How are you going to get that antiseptic through all that junk to the bacteria? It blocks it. It also deactivates a lot of these agents. Nature and composition of the surface to be disinfected. Think about it, porous versus non-porous. It's a lot easier to disinfect that table than it is this carpet. Because it's a smooth, slick surface. That's why in labs and in hospitals, that smooth, slick surface is mandated by law. You don't see carpeted hallways in most hospitals. You certainly don't see carpeted rooms or carpeted ORs. It is slick tile. The walls are tiled, they don't even want to paint walls. The OR in National Park, I think the whole room, including the ceiling, is covered by a layer of some sort of a plastic material. Contact time. If I pour bleach on that table and immediately wipe it off, it's not going to work as well as if I pour bleach on that table and let it sit for half an hour and let it dry. It just sits there and just soaks in and really kills it. To kill tuberculosis, when we bleach the countertops in the lab, we are mandated that we have to leave it. It has to remain wet for 4 minutes. So in other words, you don't wipe it on and then wipe it off so you can go back to work. You sit there and you let it dry. You have to be careful, don't break the countertops. You'll have a bleach line right about here. I know, because I have one of my strip shirts that has a white line about there. Another thing that affects, as far as what type of disinfectant we're going to use, what are we trying to disinfect? That table or that countertop in the lab, bleach works great. We keep a gallon of bleach under the sink at all times. My analyzer in chemistry, I can't pour a gallon of bleach down that machine. So that's going to affect what we can or can't use. Using heat methods or whatever. If we're talking about delicate stuff like IV tubing and stuff like that, well, we can't heat it. So we have to start finding other methods. Temperature will affect how easy it is to kill this stuff. For the most part, the warmer the temperature, the better our disinfectants work. Decrease in temperature decreases activity. pH. You have to consider the pH of the material to be disinfected and the pH of the disinfectant. So if that table is naturally alkaline, and I pour a very acidic disinfectant on it, they're going to work against each other to neutralize. So if you're trying to disinfect something that's alkaline, you need to use something that's alkaline to do it. Biofilms. This is hard to describe. You ever had a bucket of water sitting outside too long, and like inside the bucket it gets that green slime? Think of that as a biofilm. That's an algae, not a bacteria. But bacteria will do the same thing. It will begin to build up in layers.
The pink stuff in your shower.
The
You know,
what?
if you don't clean your shower out, you get
Yeah,
that pink
gunky
film.
stuff in the shower, same thing. It builds up into a layer. So even if we disinfect it, maybe we kill the top couple of layers. But we've got to really get down in there and let it soak to get it off. So if a biofilm is present, it's a lot harder to kill that stuff. Compatibility of disinfectants when using more than one, which they really frown upon. You've got to consider that one disinfectant may inactivate another. We all know you don't mix ammonia and bleach. Quick trip to the hospital. Isn't that mustard gas?
Yeah.
Mix ammonia and makes mustard gas.
Yeah.
That's not right. Put that.
I know.
All right, something you need to underline, highlight, whatever you have to do. The most common method used is heat. The conditions in an autoclave. 15 pounds of pressure for 15 minutes at 121 degrees Celsius. Burn that into your brain. I think y'all saw it intro, you're going to see it micro, you're going to see it on your registry, you're going to have to know those conditions. 15, 15, 121. An autoclave is moist heat. That is a pressure bath using steam to disinfect. Dry heat requires longer times and higher temperatures. Boiling and pasteurization do not achieve sterilization. It disinfects. Filtration. You're starting to see this a lot more because technology's come a long way. You're starting to see this a lot for water treatment. They have filters with such microscopic pores that it can allow water through but not bacteria or spores or anything like that. It's not foolproof, but it works very, very well. For really, really sensitive stuff, we tend to use radiation. Ionizing radiation, specifically gamma rays. They use these on gloves, disposable instruments, syringes, stuff like that. They'll put it all in the package, then put the whole package through ionizing radiation using gamma rays. They'll disinfect all that stuff. And it's disinfected inside the package, so it's never touched it. A lot of these survival foods you see now, camping foods, that's made for long-term storage. A lot of it has been treated with gamma rays. Because what makes food go bad typically is bacteria. They put it in the package and then irradiate it. This food will last a very long time, 20, 25 years storage for a lot. Which makes it great for backpackers and survivalists. MREs, they're gamma irradiated. That also adversely affects flavor, which is why MREs aren't very good. Non-ionizing radiation, ultraviolet light. If you've ever been in the hospital, you've seen the little blue lights in the hallways and up in the corner, stuff like that. That's a UV light. There's UV light inside of microgrids. At the end of the night, when we shut down micro for the night, somebody reaches in, flips on the UV light. We kill pretty much everything in that hill over a period of hours. What gets you in trouble is that you forget to turn that light off the next day when you're setting up your cultures and all that. Everything you set up's dead. It's killing it as soon as you're trying to set it up.
I've seen those in like ER rooms.
Yes. since infections and TB and stuff like that is so prevalent in prisons, the convict, when I worked at the prison, the convicts used to complain because they know the regulations. UV lights have to be present. It was one of their funnest games to break the UV lights. And they were always griping at Maverick because there were no UV lights. We put them inside the ductwork of the heaters and air conditioners. They were up in the ceiling like 20 feet back of the ductwork. So all the air coming in, been exposed to UV light, it was not the place where the convicts could break it. So that would make our life miserable. Because you're mandated by law, as soon as it's broken, you have to replace it. Well, eventually, you're gonna run out of UV bulbs, because they'll break them every 5 minutes. They have nothing better to do. They're convicts. They have to entertain themselves somewhere.
I had one this morning tell me I only got 29 more years in there, and I put down up to 129.
Only 29 more.
Yeah, only 29 more years left over on 29, Brandon.
So your chemical methods, number one, alcohol. That's probably our most common. That's what we use when we draw blood. It's in most of our hand sanitizers. We use alcohol a lot. We use it on surface. We use it as an antiseptic. It is not sporicidal. If we're concerned about spores, alcohol doesn't work. The aldehydes, the old one that was used was formaldehyde. Then they figured out it caused cancer, so they just kind of frowned on it. So it's not routinely used as a disinfectant. The glutaraldehydes, they still use this for some of your rubbers and plastics. I say rubbers. Rubbers are drawn in the hospital. Plastics. Your tubings and all that, they'll soak them in glutaraldehyde, let them dry in the factory. The halogens, very, very common, iodine. Used as disinfectant and antiseptic. It is not sporicidal. When used as a skin prep for a blood draw, must be on the skin for greater than 30 seconds. The only time this is used for blood draw is for blood cultures. It'll be in some sort of a prep swab. Like this is basically an alcohol wipe, but it's iodine instead of alcohol. And we use these for blood cultures. Just because we want to be, kill a little bit more of that surface bacteria before we draw something as serious as a blood culture. We don't want to contaminate it.
But it's just like corporate, it's like
Same thing. The chloropet just has an equal applicator.
Gotcha.
Some of the oldest, most commonly used is the chlorine and the chlorine compound. Most common, sodium hypochlorite. It's household bleach. Usually using a 1 to 10 dilution. Use that to clean up blood spills. Says if used as a surface disinfectant, must remain on the surface for 3 minutes. That is for bacteria. If you want to kill TB, it has to be 4 minutes. You don't need to know that, just FYI. I never liked the 1 to 10 dilution. I dropped a rack of blood one time and I had blood everywhere. And I poured straight bleach on it. I ain't playing with no 1 to 10 dilution. Whatever's down there, I want it to die.
We did a blood drive at 90 Cup, I think. Somebody was donating 2 units and we had a malfunction on the machine. My friend Jessica was over there and it exploded.
Oh, that's cool.
And I just heard her, and I turned around and she's covered
In blood.
in blood. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm coming. So she's holding on to her face, and I'm like wiping her off with like these alcohol wipes, trying to get it like off her face. I have like blood prints on my lab coat. She had it like in her ears when she went home, when she was like in the shower.
That's
It
crazy.
took us hours to clean up.
My wife being a labor and delivery nursery nurse, she's been sprayed before. It's no
Sprayed.
experience. Well, occasionally, one of the abnormal conditions with pregnancy is you can have too much amniotic pressure, which is all fine and good until you're going to deliver that baby or doing a C-section, in which case you have a large shit explosion. When they're doing that C-section, the one that got my wife, they were doing a C-section. When they open with the scalpel, it's like a whoosh, because all that pressure is going somewhere.
Right.
And guess where the doctor and the nurse are standing?
Right there.
Yeah.
So it's literally like in the movie where they're just like, go! And they're just like,
She had to go to surgery and take a shower, steal some surgery scrubs. Then she's up in the lab, and I'm like, what the hell happened to your clothes? Because she doesn't even have shoes at this point. She's got the little hospital booties. She's like, look, I need a lab coat.
I need a lab coat.
Shoes, clothes, everything had to go in the trash. There's no saving this stuff.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Hey, it happens. Welcome to the medical world.
Hey, did your wife
could never
like,
do
do they not blood type every baby that
Yes.
born? Apparently they don't do that in Washington.
I'm not surprised.
They don't do that where?
In Washington State. My sister, I was telling her blood type. She's like, "Can you do my kids?" I was like, "They do that when they're born." She's like, "No, I asked them, and they said they don't do that." I was like, "Well, they do it in Arkansas." I was like, "I'm gonna ask."
That's
She
crazy.
wife works labor and delivery. I was like,
From
"But I'm almost
Washington
certain."
State?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Washington. They just moved back from Washington.
Okay. You're thinking West Coast, you're thinking extremely liberal.
Yeah,
They don't even believe in vaccinations over there, so let's not get you carried away.
that is true.
Heavy metals, rarely used in clinical applications because of obvious reasons. It's toxic to us and to bacteria. Ammonia compounds, not really used in the medical world. The phenolics is found in some of your germicidal soaps. Gases. This is used on a lot of your medical devices. For something like an IV pump that has electronics in it, you can't soak it. Radiation will tend to mess with the electronics, so they gas it. They can put it in a chamber, flood it with like ethylene oxide, which is the most commonly used. Let it sit in there for a few minutes. Now we have a sterile, and they'll rebag it, redrape it. It's ready for the next patient. Hydrogen peroxide in gas form. Peracetic acid, and then a combination of hydrogen peroxide and peracetic acid. The one you're going to see is ethylene oxide. That's the one most common, and it's most common because it's the cheapest of these. Waterless alcohol hand rubs. This is probably the one you're going to use the most in the hospital because they're everywhere on the walls, in the lab, and everything else. You know, it's just like what's the stuff you get in the bottle?
Hippocampus.
German.
Germans. It's Germans.
Doing the hospital.
So it's waterless alcohol hand rub. Unfortunately, what they switched to at National Park is basically Germex, but it's got a, that stuff dries your hands out so bad, so it's got moisturizer in it. So now it doesn't even come off. Your hands are slimy the rest of the day.
Is it that Calstat?
Yeah.
Because they gave that to me after I had Lucas. It was a little bottle of Calstat, and I know what you're talking about. It makes your hands
Yeah, it's
sticky.
slimy.
Yeah.
So I just quit I didn't use it at all.
I
Like,
liked
mine
it
in
at
chemistry
first.
never went empty because I'm just gonna go wash my hands. I'm not using that stuff.
Well, they
Yeah.
gave us the bottles, they started giving us bottles of German to keep them all apart, so something come out and just,
Oakland's not allowed to have
they gave us.
alcohol base because people were drinking it.
Right. General micro safety, all micro labs are required to have some sort of a safety program, safety protocol addressing chemical, biological hazards, what you do in case of fire, natural disaster, bomb threats, etc. That's everywhere now, even in this school, which is why we have that on the wall. In micro, you also have to go a little bit deeper as far as infection control and safety from infectious agents, because that is our life. That is what we do all day, every day. Process patient specimens, working with actively growing cultures, make culture something that turns out to be, you know, a biohazardous threat, bioterroristic agent, lethal, you know, so we really have to be on top of our game. Ocean bloodborne pathogens, I know you're all familiar with that. Gotta go through that. Exposure control plan, that has to be reviewed and updated annually. Includes PPE, as far as what you have to wear, what you have to do, what's all the safety you have to go through in micro. Universal standard precautions. Engineering controls. Micro labs have to have a biosafety kit that you can work with. If you're dealing with anything remotely that could be dangerous. If you're in a doctor's clinic and all you do is set up urine cultures, you don't need a biolab. But in a hospital where you're setting up nasty blood cultures, pneumonia, stuff like that, you've got a biosafety kit that you're working There are 3 classes. Class 1 does nothing but, it's basically negative pressure. It just makes sure that all the airflow comes away from you, not towards you. Class 2 is what you see in the hospitals and what we have in here. The airflow goes down, is filtered, goes up, and is filtered, and back out. It has multiple 2 to 3 layers of HEPA filters to make sure that nothing gets back into micro or into the outside air.
Where is out?
Huh?
Where is out? Like,
Out of the hospital. Out of the
open
roof.
air?
Huh?
On, like, open air roof?
Yeah. But it's filtered before it's exhausted out. Class 3, you don't see in the hospitals. You're gonna see this for like state health department, CDC, whatever. This is completely enclosed. That's the ones you see on TV where they just stick their arms through the rubber gloves and work. You're never exposed to it. It comes in a sealed container, put the container in there, and then reach in and you open the container inside the hood. Never exposed to it. When they're working with stuff like Ebola, tuberculosis, anthrax, this is the type of hood they're using. They're never in exposure to it. And you do not see that in hospitals. You're going to see class 2s. Class 1 is something you might see in a high school or college biology lab. The very bare minimum of safety.
Mr. Colley.
So,
If anthrax is pretty much unkillable,
yes.
how do they get that out?
How do they get it out of that? It depends on where you're at. In the CDC, not only is this completely sealed, the room it is in is completely sealed with a double airlock. You walk into the airlock, you suit up in a fully contained suit. You open the airlock, you come into the room, and then this is closed.
So how do you prevent cross-contamination?
It's very difficult. They gas it, they irradiate it, they do everything in their power to kill everything. Again, anthrax spores, they're probably in the cabinet.
It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, we're just gonna take the whole building and just bury it.
So
Bury the whole
eventually,
fucking thing.
if they work with anthrax enough spores build up, they're eventually gonna have to get rid of that and just get a whole.
Probably. But again, the only way you could do it then would be to, I don't know, furnace, built it.
Put it on the island.
Right.
I bet there's 1,200 of those.
If you get to a high enough temperature, you can even kill spores. Fire is not a high enough temperature. A smelting furnace, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
But you know, at that point, we're talking about 2,500 degrees, not 700 degrees like fire. 750.
What degree do they dissipate for body?
For
Like
what?
cremation for body? Like cremation of a body?
About 1,500.
I was just trying to gauge. How weird.
So work practice controls, you want to perform a task in such a way as to minimize likelihood of exposure. So in other words, and you will see every microtech in the world not doing this. You don't want to open that plate and look at it until you're under the hood. No microtech does that. You're supposed to, but they're going to take it out of the incubator and they're going to look at it. Well, if that's something bad, just expose it. We've learned over the years to identify organisms based on smell. But doing this to a plate is bad.
Yeah.
The infection control doctor at National Guard was really driving me and Becky because she'd walk in to ask a question or whatever and wonder sniff the plates. I was smelling like, yeah, it smells like San Marcos. Yeah, they don't like that. PPE must be readily accessible. Gowns, gloves, lab coats, face shields. We don't typically use face shields in micro because the way that micro hood is set up, when your arms are in it, there's a glass shield that comes down to about here. So you don't really need a face shield because you're looking through glass there. Now if you're looking under it like this, maybe you want glasses or something. That's on you at that point. There are biosafety levels as recommended by the CDC. Level 1, minimal threat to lab personnel environments. This would be like your normal floor. I mean, almost never pathogenic unless you have something else going on, you're immunocompromised. Level 2, pose moderate threat. Level 3 has the potential for aerosol transmission and may have lethal consequences. Level 4 are dangerous and exotic, high risk to life and limb. Lab personnel must be thoroughly trained in handling. In the hospital, you're going to deal with levels 1 and levels 2. Rarely, if you by accident, you might grow a level 3 and then you're going to ship it off state health department. We're not going to work that up. If we grow tularemia, which is rapid fever, common in Arkansas, we're shipping that out. We're not working that up in the hospital. You have been exposed probably, but only briefly. Becky was lucky enough to catch tularemia when she worked at Children's. Where she grew it, where she caught it. I think she caught it. When we're talking about level 4, we're starting to talk about things like anthrax, Ebola, mad cow disease. We're starting to talk about even state health is not going to play with this. That's going to Atlanta. Or Denver, because they have CDC in Denver. As far as disposal of infectious waste, disposing of plates, disposing of swabs, things like that, that's all mandated by state. Let's go out to biohazard or Sharps container. They incinerate. Sharps containers are actually smelted. They melt that stuff.
How are level 4s transferred? Usually.
A level 4, if encountered, when it leaves state health, well, number one, it's not going to leave state. CDC is going to come get it. I mean, the state of Arkansas is not going to take this to Atlanta. Atlanta's going to come to Little Rock. And it will go from Little Rock to Atlanta under armed guard. We usually have 4 to 6 people with machine guns accompanying this. Because if you're unlucky enough that you grew anthrax in a lab, if you slip up and tell someone, hey, I grew anthrax last week, CDC's going to come get it. Well, if somebody idiot's going to post this on Facebook, somebody with terroristic intent is going to read that, now they know to intercept this convoy. That would be a mistake. Be a fatal mistake. Because they're not going to play with it. They're going to shoot now, ask questions later. Because that is not a risk to the people involved in transporting. That is a risk to our safety in the United States. Yes.
You said it's a federal mistake. Who is committing the act to cause a fatality?
The armed guards.
So they'll read my Facebook page, post, find out where I left this shooter.
No, it'd be a fatal mistake for the person trying to get that convoy.
No, it's only
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Just have a roast and roast it and shoot you in the face and you have just with terrorism.
and there are certain cases where they won't even transport.
What do they carry?
Huh?
What do they carry?
The same container they carry radioactive waste in.
Oh.
It's a large metal lead-lined container. CDC has also been known to go to the states, figure out what it is, identify it, and not transport, but store it on site. They've done that as well. That's probably more common. If it's something that they don't really want to study or anything like that, they destroy on site. Chemical safety, employee right to know. You have a right to know the chemicals you're dealing with. I need to retype that. Material safety data sheets, MSDS. You have a right to have access to that. They're no longer MSDS, by the way. Now they're just SDS.
On that yesterday.
Hazardous chemicals inventory. Again, you have to know what you're dealing with. Safety for these chemicals. All this information is included in that SDS. If this fails, what do I do about it? Fire safety. This is why you don't see as many incinerators and stuff in the lab as you used to. That's why everything has gone to disposable plastic loops. Some places still use incinerators, but they frown upon it. They're trying to push it out. Storage of compressed gases must be properly restrained or stored in secured and vented areas. We mentioned Tuesday that some organisms like oxygen, some like CO2 and all that. To provide that, we have to have a big tank of CO2. It can't just be sitting over in a corner. It has to be chained to the wall. You can't walk over and bump it and accidentally knock it over because it'll explode, kill one of the things that serve. These things are a bomb. So it has to be chained to the wall, things like that. Electrical safety. This is the domain of like maintenance at the hospital. They come around and check all that, but if we see a frayed cord or something that's an electrical hazard, it's our duty to report that to them so that they can come deal with it. Miscellaneous safety, back safety, you know, lift for your legs, not your back. First aid training, immunizations, safety training through OSHA and JACO. They require documented safety training on fire and hazardous materials. JACO requires documentation of everything. So the big nasties, bioterroristic agents. There is a laboratory response network established by the CDC. There are 3 levels of labs. The Sentinel labs, that's your hospital labs. Your only role is to recognize that you're dealing with one of the big nasties. That's it. Recognize it, report it to state, get it out of your hospital. Your reference labs will be like your lab corps or like your state health department, the people you're sending this stuff to. If they then confirm that this is one of the reportable agents to the CDC, it will go to the national laboratories. Bioterroristic agents are divided into 3 categories. Category A is the greatest threat. Smallpox, anthrax, Ebola, things of that nature. Category B is moderate morbidity, low mortality. Typhus. It's one of those things, as long as we can recognize it, we can cure you. Tularemia fits under that category. Relatively easy to cure, very hard to diagnose. Category 3 is some of the emergent stuff, the really, really rare stuff that's starting to become more common. Dengue fever, hemorrhagic fever. Believe it or not, there were, I don't remember, there's either 3 or 4 cases of dengue fever diagnosed in Arkansas last year. So this is one of those fevers you start bleeding from your eyes and gums and nose and running 110-degree chill, things of that nature.
It's sort of like Ebola.
It starts to get real similar, yeah, if it goes too long.
I thought you only got that in third world countries.
Some people like traveling.
We basically have open borders now. We're not a third world country, but we're exposed on a daily basis. Because we have free travel. People fly here for vacation, they want to visit New York City. You know, they have family in Arkansas, they whatever. You know, so they come from Africa. We have exchange students. Things of that nature. And that's why we will cover a lot of these more exotic diseases in Africa, in Central America, in Southeast Asia, because we are exposed to them more and more frequently. Malaria was unheard of in the United States, 30 years ago. Now it's fairly common. It's actually endemic to southern tip of Florida now. Because we have people coming in, we have people going out, people go on vacation, bring stuff back with them, things of that nature. So we're exposed more and more frequently to some of these diseases that 20, 30 years ago we didn't need to know about. End of round 1. Question. Yes.
So one of these big nasties